Hello, I'm Bette Davis, and welcome to this program on the Green Zone. The Green Zone is a concept that was developed by noted author and psychotherapist Dr. Khaled Sohail and presented in his powerful new book, The Art of Living in Your Green Zone. We are fortunate today to have Dr. Sohail with us. Dr. Sohail graduated from Memorial University in Newfoundland with his specialization in psychiatry. He is presently working in his own clinic, the Creative Psychotherapy Clinic in Whitby, Ontario. He's written a number of books and completed a number of documentaries. Let's talk to him about his latest book. Dr. Sohail, I've read your book. It's really interesting. So what zone are you in today?
Oh, I'm in my green zone, and I stay most of the time in my green zone.
Good.
And you look in your green zone too?
Yes, I am. So can you elaborate on the green, yellow, red zones that you talk about in your book?
Yeah, these are the zones. This is the concept that I developed while doing my practice in Creative Psychotherapy Clinic, working with individuals and couples and families and seeing them go through different mental states. I think the concept is basically, in a very simplified version, that all of us are in one of the zones at a particular time. When people are in the green zone, they are relaxed and comfortable and enjoying life and are happy. When they're in the yellow zone, they're a little upset, a little angry, a little frustrated, a little sad. And when they fall into the red zone, then they get very distressed, very depressed, and sometimes lose control.
Dr. Sohail, in your book, you talk about the 3 R's: recognizing, recovering, and restraining. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that for us?
Yeah, the recognizing part, I think, is the first step. It's the step of awareness, when people know not only what zone they are in, but what zone they move from one moment to the other. So when they fall into the red or the yellow zone, I think the idea is for them to learn to recover from the yellow and the red zone. And I suggest to them that they have to find their special ways. Some might go for a walk, some might listen to the music, some might play with their children, some might do something, their hobbies. And in that way they learn to recover from the red zone. And once they have recovered and recognized what factors, what circumstances, what people push them into the yellow and the red, then they learn to restrain. And by these 3 factors, they are spending more and more time into the green zone and less time into the yellow and the red zones.
At this point, we've been focusing on individuals. Could you tell us how this concept relates to interpersonal relationships?
I think most people that I've interviewed, when they go to the yellow or the red zone, they blame it on the other person. They are in a relationship at work or at home or in their community, and they would say that he did this, she did this, and as a reaction to that, I fell into the yellow and the red zone. So I suggest to them that their relationship is based on their communication. And for the communication to be in the green zone, it is very important that both parties have to be in the green zone. So if one is in the yellow or the red, then I suggest to that person to announce that I'm sorry, I cannot have the discussion, I cannot communicate with you, give me some time. And I suggest to the green zone person to be respectful of that, give them some time, which I call as a timeout, and then at a later time, in the evening or the next day, then they can have a green zone sort of relationship. Because I say to them that the person who is in the red zone, talking to the person in the red zone is like talking to a drunk person. You can keep on talking, but you're not going to have a meaningful dialogue with them.
What do you suggest for those relationships that are in the yellow and red zones? How can they cope with that?
Yeah, I think once they recognize what the pattern is and what are the factors that bring them to the yellow and the red, that awareness in itself can prevent that. So, for example, one of the things they do is the red zone person throws a bait. One of the common example is that the husband comes home after a long day's work. He was stuck in the traffic. He got late. And when he got home, the wife who was waiting for him at dinner ready, starts sort of having an argument. Why did you come late? And he says, I'm sorry, I got stuck in the traffic, or it was a lot of work in the office. Rather than acknowledging that, she sort of goes a step further. And she says, you're always late, you never come home, we're always waiting for you, the children never see you, they don't spend enough time with you. And that makes him really angry. And then he throws a red zone comment back and says to her, whenever I want to go out, you are going, doing shopping, or you're talking to your friends, and you don't pay any attention to me. So in that way, a simple thing can lead to the relationship falling into the red zone. So I think that awareness that how the red zone person throws a bait and how the green zone person bites the bait, that sort of awareness sort of makes them aware of the pattern of the system that they're operating under. And that awareness that helps them sort of either to resolve it or to dissolve it or do any other things about that.
Are there other ways that couples can address conflict successfully?
I think once the pattern is developed, I sort of give them some certain ideas that what kind of things they can do on their own, and if they cannot do on their own, then one of the things is to get the third party involved. That is the process of mediation. Sometimes you might need a friend, sometimes you might need a neighbor, but the person has to be respected by both parties. It might be a church minister, or sometimes it is a therapist. That therapist, that minister, that friend, that colleague is in the green zone relationship with both parties. And he or she, because of his relationship, can then bring both parties into the green zone, and then they decide, and they might resume the relationship or they might come to a peaceful ending. But at least there is a movement in that, and they're not stuck there.
This is the family system that we've been talking about. What other systems are affected by the red, yellow, and green zones?
Yeah, I think I discussed in my book that each of us every day move from one system to the other. Most of us start with the family, then we go to work, so we're in the work system, then we in the evening go to visit friends, attend some parties, be part of a member of an organization. So for people to be aware that like individuals and relationships, the systems also live in the green, yellow, and red zone. So if the person identifies that the system is in the yellow and the red, then for him to make certain steps, to be aware of that how he or she is going to cope with that. Because fundamentally or emotionally, systems are far more stronger than the individual, and they take over. And a green zone person, if it is not aware or has not learned certain techniques, can easily fall into the red zone because of the red zone system.
So if systems are stronger than individuals, how can individuals cope with being in red zone systems?
I think one of the concepts I developed in the book, I call it an emotional raincoat. It is a mental preparation when you're entering, when you're driving to work, or when you're coming back home, depending upon the system, that you're mentally prepared that this is what you're going to expect. And then you have a certain strategy. Obviously, it is very, depends upon the system. One of the things people do at work is to have a little support network. So if they, out of the 100 people, if there are 5 of them, they are sort of have a good relationship, they're like comrades, they can go for lunch, they can meet after work, or they can discuss certain things, contact the union, write a letter together. So any step that a small group can do is basically to make certain changes. And after a while, if they cannot do that, then there is also consideration that they want to leave that zone and then go back to school, find a different job, explore certain other avenues. But that awareness, I think, gives them certain hope, certain optimism, and they feel that at least they are not that helpless and hopeless. They can take certain steps with a certain support to change their lifestyle.
In your book, you mentioned that there are 3 paths to the green zone. Can you share with us what they are?
I think the whole evolution of the concept is that for people to understand their emotional zones, understand their relationships, understand their systems, after that day-to-day job or day-to-day activities, I suggest to them to see their life as a unit, as a package, as the whole bigger lifestyle. And if they have been living in the yellow or the red zone for a number of years, then I suggest to them that they might take or explore certain routes depending upon the people that I saw. I think the first route or the first road is of creativity. That many people, they have a certain hobby, they have a certain interest, they have a certain passion, and if they follow that, I think some of them had as a teenager, but they got so bogged down with the job, so bogged down with the family, that they lost touch with their creative side. And following that creative side is usually a very, very significant way for them to discover the green zone lifestyle. I think those people who are not very creative but may be very religious, for them I feel that their spiritual dimension, they might have to leave the highway of tradition and might follow the trail of their heart in the spiritual context, and they might discover certain activities or whether they need to meditate or they need to read certain books or meet certain people that help them with their spiritual path. And the third path that I feel is very, very complementary to the community is the volunteer work. I call it serving humanity, that people might donate certain part of their time, get involved in activities in the community, it is a school, it is a hospital, it's the church activities, that in that way they don't need a PhD in psychology, they don't need a master's in biology. It is just their motivation to help others, it is their willingness to share their time. And I think when they're helping others, there is a very, very sort of a mystical and magical part to that. And in that way, they some or the other get more strength. They get more sort of a reward in that way. Another person, when they appreciate their work, So I think those are the different ways of helping people, whether it's creativity or spirituality or serving humanity, that these are the changes in the lifestyle. And within a matter of months, people have made some major, major transformations in their life.
You began your book with a very inspiring story of a young girl, and it began with the concept that we all have special gifts. And later you talked about life having meaning. Are those two concepts related?
Yeah, I think this has been my awareness that for people to discover a meaningful life or a purposeful life or to explore the dream, they have to go deep inside and realize that what special gift nature had offered them. And that is maybe my belief, that all of us have something very special that life has offered us. And I think once we get in touch with that part, that somehow the other sort of guides us. Khalil Gibran once said that don't ever think that you can follow love. If love is generous to you, love will guide you and you have to follow that. So I think it is a certain element of that passion, whether it's in love or spirituality, that helps or guides people. And then I think once they're on the right track, then it's a matter of time. Then they sort of go on, and I think they say wonderful changes.
One of the ideas in your book that stood out for me was the concept of the conditioned self and the natural self. Can you talk a bit about each of those concepts?
Yeah, I think while I was helping people in their day-to-day life to discover the green day or discover the green week, I realized that many people were so conditioned that they were sort of doing things that were expected from them, from others. So I think that's where I developed the conditioned self is that part of ourselves that is guided by should, have to, and must. And those people who are brought up in a very traditional, very conservative, and very religious families, they have a very well developed this conditioned self. And when they don't follow the expectations, many times they get very either guilty or feel remorseful or very upset. So balancing that, I asked them to discover their natural self. And the natural self is guided by what people like to do, what they want to do, what they love to do. And I even suggest to them that pick up an hour. There's a green hour. So for that hour, you do what you love to do. That is where they might go for a walk, they might listen to music, they might create, they might visit a friend. And that hour then becomes 2 hours, then it becomes an afternoon, then becomes an evening. So in that way, I call them baby steps. They start to explore, they start to encourage that part of themselves that they have left behind. And I think once that happens, they start to sort of enjoy more. There is a certain recreational aspect. There is a certain amount of that smile or that excitement or that energy that we associate with children or with teenagers. They become so serious. They are very, very respectful, but also very responsible. So I think that carefree, that childlike, that sort of intuitive part, that creative part, that I feel is where the natural self is. And that natural self, sort of, I think when it comes out, brings a lot of happiness for them.
So is there a relationship between the natural self and creativity from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I've used the word creativity in a broader sense. This creativity does not mean that they need to paint or they have to write poetry or they have to act into plays. I think the creativity might come up in their cooking or interior decoration or in their gardens. So that part is the creative side. So I think natural self, when it is more developed, starts to express itself in a creative way. And I think, and those people who are artists or, sort of very gifted, for them, that creative self, then helps them even create some masterpieces. So yeah, that is connected to each other.
As a therapist, I really liked the simplicity of the model. I felt that lay people and professionals alike could really embrace the concept very easily. I also liked the strength of the model, the strength of the philosophy and the skills that you talked about. How is this model different from other models that you've seen that focus on self-growth?
You see, I felt that the mental health system in a traditional way has been sort of into different groups. So there is a biological group where the emphasis is more on biochemical understanding of the brain. So many people get very confused when they listen very, very sophisticated terms like 5-hydroxytryptamine and serotonin and noradrenaline. They don't fully understand. The same way when people who are very analytically minded, focusing on the unconscious and those defense mechanisms. I think my idea was to present a theory, a model, a concept in a way that is not sort of either very judgmental or not that complicated that a common person cannot understand. So I think in that way, because it has a certain sort of a universality to it, and my feeling was that most people, their families, they bought it, they understood, they started to practice, and they started to see a change in their life. And I was really surprised that although the concept had developed in my clinic, but when I would go to visit my friends on the dinner table, they will have some guests and they say to me, Dr. Swale, can you share with them this green, yellow, red zone model? And I was surprised that they would pick it up, and then within a couple of hours they started using the language. And that, from a clinical setting, went to people's living rooms, and from living rooms it went to the school system, and it went to the social system. So I was quite pleased that the receptivity or the reaction was very friendly, and that in a way inspired me to write and create more.
After I read your book and started using this therapy in my own clinic, the response that I got was that people were really captivated by the very incredibly creative stories that you used. How did you come up with the idea to use these stories in the book?
I think basically to me, I've done a lot of a lot of creative writing. I've sort of written a lot of sort of short stories myself. So I know the power of storytelling, and I think that sort of connects people, they identify with it. So I was very pleased when some of the people that I worked with were willing to share their personal accounts. And in that way, the philosophy with the stories, I think, was far more sort of effective, and people touched the people's hearts, and they could identify and relate to that. And that also inspired us to sort of come with the idea of Greenzone stories, because some of those people who shared the stories in the book or shared with them in my clinic were quite willing to share for other people, because they knew that it could educate people, it could help them understand, and they could become either role models or source of inspiration for other people. So I think that has sort of made me feel very sort of excited about the whole project and very inspired about it, that it can go just from the clinic to a wider audience and might inspire many other people who might listen to those stories and relate to them.
So we can look forward to more Greenzone stories.
Sure, we will.
How exciting. Thank you so much.
Great.
Are you dissatisfied with your life? Have you been sad or anxious for as long as you can remember? Do you find yourself getting angry in a matter of minutes? Do you often think why you can't get out of a bad mood? Do you find yourself wondering what is the meaning of your life? If you've answered yes to any or all of these questions, then you need to learn to create your Greenzone lifestyle.
Greenzone is my happy space.
Freedom comes from being in the green zone, not from being with the green dollar.
I think it will work for anybody. This concept is just a healthy way of thinking.
I think the green zone concept could benefit any organization, no matter how small or large.
The green zone has changed my life completely.
What I really like about the Greenzone, what really stands out for me, is the concept of resolve and dissolve.
You can learn the healthy, happy, and peaceful way of life that Dr. Suhail calls the Green Zone lifestyle. You can use his green, yellow, and red zone concepts to understand your emotional dilemmas and make the right choices. The Green Zone lifestyle is a method that will help you understand your emotional zones using the images of traffic lights. When you are in your green zone, you are happy, relaxed, and peaceful. When you fall into your yellow zone, you become somewhat distressed, sad, or anxious. And when you are in your red zone, you become extremely depressed or angry. Dr. Suhail's suggestions will help you maintain yourself in a positive state of mind and create healthy relationships. Like traffic lights, your moods and relationships change, requiring your constant awareness. In your green zone, everything is positive, so go. In your yellow zone, proceed with caution. In your red zone, you are in danger. Stop, reflect, be responsible, and get back into your green zone.
Creating a green zone philosophy is like giving birth to a baby. You see, it's a wonderful experience. It's something at that age, at that stage of your life, you don't feel that something new is going to happen to you. And then something, all your life experiences, all your reading, all your encounters with life, they start to come together. And suddenly something creative happens. And it is like giving birth to a baby, but it's also giving birth to your own self. And this rebirthing phenomenon, I think, always fascinated me. Because before I came to psychiatry, I was in obstetrics. And working in the labor room was one of the most fascinating things, how a human being can give birth to another human being. That is like just a human miracle. But the thing that fascinated me was that the woman who gave birth to the baby was a different woman after giving birth to the baby, as if she was a different woman. She gave birth to herself, being a mother. And the mothering, that was the most nurturing, the more affectionate, the more loving, the symbol that we use for a wonderful, giving, nurturing experience. And that is why when we started our clinic, the only thing that I brought to the clinic was a statue. And that statue stays on my table when I'm doing therapy. That is a statue of a mother and a baby. And the baby is coming out of the womb of the mother. If you see from one angle, she's the mother giving birth to the baby. And another angle, if you see as if she's giving birth to herself. And I feel that we are all giving birth to ourselves all the time, but we are not aware. Now some of us go a step further, recognize it, become aware of it, and become consciously part of that rebirthing experience. And for some, it is a reaction to the circumstances. That is why a philosopher said that most of us die before we are fully born.
To me, the green zone is basically a way of life. It's really where everybody should be. It's the happy time. It's where you go to enjoy your life. It's where you get all your activities. It's where you have fun with your friends, your family, anybody that's out there. It is the ideal place to be. It's the only place you can go to really enjoy your life to the fullest.
The green zone is a tool that helps you become more aware of yourself.
The green zone has actually helped me to understand more what it means to be healthy, happy, and also it helps you to learn what things in your life aren't healthy for you. And for me, that was probably the biggest stumbling block with being okay with not having certain relationships or changing your interactions with others to be in a better place.
Once I read The Green Zone, it turned everything around for me. I was able to see, rather not just see things as they're meant to be, but more, I was able to disconnect myself from the emotions attached. So I was able to take a situation, understand it, rather than take a situation and have a defensive reaction or an emotional reaction to it. I was able to disconnect myself.
Personality theory and green zone theory combined together have really helped us as a family gain an understanding of each other.
Creating healthy green zone workplaces has always been a project that has been close to my heart. I think that there are many workplaces that can benefit from healthy concepts. And when I was introduced to the Green Zone, I saw it as something that workplaces could really apply within their work groups. So when I began to think about the Green Zone, I realized that as people are introduced to the Green Zone in the workplace, they can actually learn about themselves in the Green Zone. They can learn that they are and can be in the green or the yellow or the red. They can also learn that other people can be in the green or the yellow or the red. But they can also learn that their workplace can be in one of those zones. Because what we talk about is that it's not only the individual that can be in the Green Zone, but it can also be systems. And the main systems we discuss are family, social, and work. So in the workplace, we help people understand that although they may come in the morning feeling like they are in the Green Zone, their workplace may actually be in the yellow or the red. And what I find really interesting in the last couple of years, as I started working with companies in creating more healthy workplaces, was that I realized that there is work that is actually in the red zone. If you work in an emergency department, if you work in a trauma or crisis kind of situation, then that work is work that is regularly and expected to be in the red zone. And this is a great technique for helping people realize that that is their work situation and that may be in the red zone, but they have to be able to periodically remove themselves, gauge what zone they are in themselves, and do whatever they can, whatever their techniques are, to get themselves back to the Green Zone. And they need to do that on a regular basis as they work through their work day.
One of their main concerns is what their bottom line is. And it should be the main concern. If we're in business, we should be making money, not losing money. We should be having people who are great at what they do and enjoy it and have it show. Have that wow factor show. Because companies who wow others and are working in the green, they're the people who are standing out in society. They're the ones who are gaining the trust of the general public and their business. And that's the business that I'm in, is creating those green zones in workplaces.
In an office environment, there's many different personalities. Everybody has different issues inside the office, outside the office. Most people that have issues outside the office will bring them into the office, and they're not able to really disconnect themselves. And amongst my peers and my staff, what I introduced was a green, yellow, red flag concept. Everyone has a cubicle and everyone has these green flags, and you put them up, or you green and yellow flags or red flags depending on your moods for the day. So it initializes and it lets the other person within our group of our team be aware of what this other person's zone is at that time. And it's made a huge difference and a huge impact, whereas if someone's in the green zone, we know they're easily approachable, not a problem that day. Someone's in the yellow zone, then we know, okay, give them a few minutes just so they can calm down and go back to their more or less neutral or green zone. And when anyone had that red flag up, then we knew to stay away from them for that throughout the course of the day. A funny story, actually, one of my directors of finance came from the U.S. Visiting us on a tour of our office. So after spending the whole day with him, he came down into my office, and walking around, he noticed all these flags up, and he noticed my flag specifically, and he came into my office and said, Ralph, tell me, what are these flags for? Why do you have these flags up? And I explained it. I said, well, I explained as much to my abilities what the green zone is. Essentially what I did was explain what the green zone meant to me. And I said, this is our way of coping with every day, because everyone's different. Everyone has a good day, everyone has a bad day, everyone has a normal day. So depending on how each person feels, we've put those flags up. So when they feel bad, they can put up their red or yellow flags, or if they feel great, they put up their green flag. And my director of finance loved it. He was very, very impressed, and he actually said that that's a great concept, and I'd love to get a chance to read that book and apply it within our office. Later, after that, I found out that there's actually another version of the Greenzone. The book that I had read is working in your green environment, or green zone, which I'm eager to get my hands on.
As with any model, if it can't become functional and useful for the individual, they're going to not participate in the treatment or the well-being of it. In order to do this, obviously we need to recognize that young children don't have the capacity to advocate and facilitate change on their own. So it was really important for me to support them in developing those kind of relationships and connections for them. There was a lot of collaboration with the parents in educating them around the concept of the green zone and using the language to help the young person manage themselves in a more functional way. Once the parents had embraced it and were more on board, it was much easier then to take it back to the school and advocate for the school to develop the same sort of language, the same sort of interactions, the same sort of concept and understanding. What that did was allow the systems to recognize the child as somebody that experiences distress in a manner that doesn't overly personalize it against the person that the distress is happening to. So with that in mind, the school then began to understand the areas that were much more distressing for the individual and how they could support him in the yellow and the red zone and help invite him into the green zone for the purposes of improving their opportunity to educate him, as well as for his opportunity to feel more competent and functional at school. It was a wonderful experience. The school staff greatly understood the concept and the purpose of it and the reasoning and the rationale. So we offered a sort of mini school case conference with the major players, teachers, supervisors in the yards, school administration, lunch monitors, significant peers and others in the young person's life, and educated them about the model, which got them to be very much his green zone invitation. So the young person was able to then have multiple invitations to the green zone, even though they may have been drifting into the yellow or red. Subsequently, the young person began to experience school in a much less conflictual and combative way, and his behavior and his attitude and his mood and his motivation towards learning, school, caregivers, disciplinarian people became much softer and much more pleasant, much more manageable for him, and he began to feel greater competency, greater personal control of his behavior. His ideas and his thoughts were being more well received by his peers, therefore his social relationships began to improve. So it was a very positive sort of experience for this individual.
In business, there's a lot of stress associated with business. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of, in my view, accidents waiting to happen. And for me, it's just a way of managing myself and the people who work with me and my customers so that really we all stay in our green zone and we all win at the end of the day.
Nobody's immune to the yellow or red zone. It's a matter of how you manage it when you get there to take you back to the green zone. And in doing that, I think it's really important to do what I think are the 3 R's. To recognize your zone, then learn how to recover from your zone, and then learn how to restrain yourself from entering a negative zone. Once you're able to master that, then you're able to then manage, assess, recognize, recover, and restrain yourself in certain situations within your own personal life. Therefore, you're going to have a much more enriched family life, enriched intimacy, personal life with your significant other, your neighbors, and that kind of stuff, because the green zone is not just about a sliver of one's life. It's about a lifestyle.
When I was exploring this whole phenomenon of human existence, human condition, before I became a psychotherapist, I was a poet. And my fascination as a poet was the mystery of love. What is this phenomenon that two people who are strangers, they look at each other, they feel something, and then they're willing to do anything. And that romance, that passion grows. They go for candlelight dinners, they go for long walks, they say all these promises. I used to say, is it temporary insanity or is it a reality? And then gradually, the thing that really surprised me was the same two lovers, the same two people who are passionately in love with each other finally turn out to be strangers, even as enemies. And the question was, how did this love turn into this hate? And I discovered the dark side of love, the dark side of love that can show as jealousy, that can show as insecurity, that can show as anger, that can show in resentment. And I was fascinated as a student of human psychology that how does this happen? How does this transformation take place? How does this person who is so loving can be so resentful? And if you see the divorces, it can end up in a bitter divorces, thousands of dollars, thousands of hours, and they are at a stage that they do not want even to look at each other, do not want to talk to each other, do not always want to converse with each other. And even with their children, the bitterness, the resentment goes on from one generation to the other. And I was exploring that in my clinic day after day, week after week. A moment came. There was a moment in that one of the sessions where I said to this gentleman, I said, you say to me you love this woman. You say to me you will do anything for her. But on the other hand, you don't respect her. You are angry with her. You say these negative things. And he said to me, you know, Dr. Suhail, I just can't control it. I just don't know what happened. Something takes over me. And then I behave in a way, and the next day I'm regretful. I say, I'm sorry. And then she says, you said sorry 5 days ago. You said sorry 10 times before. I don't believe you anymore. Your words don't mean anything. They're empty promises. And then I said to him, you know, let me give you an idea. And he was very attentively listening to me. And I said, do you drive? He said, yes. I said, do you see these traffic lights? And he said, yes. I said, what happens when you are passing through and you see yellow? And he looked at me and he said, I put the foot on the accelerator. And I said, why is that? He said, I'm always in a hurry to go to work, to get home. And I said, a wise man does not put the foot on the accelerator. A wise man put the foot on the brakes. And that is how it is a communication between you and your wife. If you really love her, if you really adore her, if you want to save your marriage, you have to learn to put your foot on the brakes when it is yellow, when you are angry and you are frustrated, before you say things that you're going to regret the next day. And somehow it clicked. And the next week, when I met his wife, and he said, I don't know what you did. This man has changed. There was this dramatic change that he got this point. And it is like, I had just shared that as a very casual an image in my mind, but the effect on him was so drastic that I thought maybe I hit upon something wonderful. And I always believed that if you're searching for something, searching in life about some truth, about some reality, and many scientists, many psychologists were looking for something else. My sort of wish was to help him be more respectful to his wife. And in that way, I stumbled upon this concept that I gave him the analogy of the traffic lights. And I thought maybe if it has worked for him, it might work for somebody else. So I tried on the second couple, and I tried on the third couple, and tried on the fourth couple. And gradually I realized that it had some power. It had some, and then I realized that a green zone, that started the concept started to grow. It was like a seed. And it grew in my mind. And I said, maybe the green zone communication, a healthy, peaceful communication can only take place when both parties are in the green.
As a teacher, I was extremely wrapped up in my career to the point of obsession and lost the focus of some of the other aspects of my life and frankly even neglected to some extent the relationship with my family. Having discovered the Green Zone and dedicated myself wholly to living in the Green Zone, I find that I am now able to relate to the people much easier, much more positively than I have in the past. And I am healthier than I have been. I am doing things that make me feel positive about life, my relationships, and I look forward to new challenges, which is totally opposite to the way I felt a few years ago when I was living in the red zone. I was not looking forward to the next day. I hated my job, I detested the people I worked with, I detested the bureaucracy and hypocrisy of the educational system. That is no longer my concern. I'm focused now on the positive aspects of human existence, and I'm doing things that make me happy, and I believe I'm making a difference in the lives of others.
My introduction to the Greenzone was probably a lifesaver, definitely a lifesaver for me. I met Dr. Sohail approximately 10, 11 years ago. I have to admit I didn't take it seriously for probably the first 2 years. Then I don't know what happened, but something hit me, and boy am I glad it did. It taught me of the Greenzone. It has changed my life totally. As far as relationships, my co-workers, home life, the way I treat my daughters, everything about it, my friends. It's just been a very, very, very good thing to happen.
When I introduced the Greenzone to my daughter and she so eagerly embraced it, the next person I wanted to share it with was my mom. My mom and I, if you saw us today, you would comment at how green our relationship is. It really is in the Greenzone. Somebody would say it's bright green, but we weren't always that way. As a therapist, you know that those relationships are very important, and you really work on improving them over the years. And I always did with my mom. But when I was introduced to the Greenzone, I realized that it was something that I was really going to find of benefit in my relationship with my mom. So I introduced her to the concept of the Greenzone. She knew Sohail. She had met him when I met him 30 years ago, and she was very fond of him. She loved his sense of humor. She loved his easygoing nature. And so she was very eager to read his book. And so I gave her a copy. Sohail autographed a copy of The Art of Living in Your Greenzone, and I sent it to her, gave it to her. And she was delighted with it. She really could embrace it. And so we started using that language and using that way of communicating in our relationship. And so now if we get into a yellow zone or red zone situation, and it's very, very rare. I don't remember getting into a red zone situation with her lately. But if we sort of slide into the yellow, what we do is three things. First, the other person will stop and be quiet, hoping that the person who slid into the yellow will get the idea, do that sort of assessment of what zone they're in and correct it themselves. If that doesn't happen, the other person will say, I think we're getting into the yellow here. I think we're not going in the right direction. And if that doesn't work, then one of us will gracefully end the conversation, planning to reconnect at a later date when we're both back into the green. And it has been such an incredible growth experience for both of us. We went from having sort of a yellow-green kind of relationship to having a bright green relationship. And now we are at the stage where we talk about things that we have actually never talked about before in our lives. We have just recently decided to go on vacation together for 2 weeks, which is a really big thing. We've never done that before. And we have started to share some things about our lives. And I've realized how similar I am to her. I'm just blown away by the things that I struggle with in my life. My creativity, my love of creativity, and how long it takes me to sort of process something that's creative and work it through and come to the point where I have something that I really like, and it's exactly the way that I want it. And I realized the other day, as we were talking about her redoing and decorating part of her house, she's exactly like me. And I had never known that before. So we've moved into this space where we are not afraid to talk to each other about difficult situations. There are issues that we've decided that are off limits, and we're not going to talk about them. So in a way, we have resolved many of the yellow zone situations that we were experiencing. We have dissolved many that we were experiencing, and we have this wonderful bright green relationship, and it's very joyful.
I was introduced to the Greenzone in March of 2003 on the recommendation of my family doctor. I met with Dr. Sohail. Dr. Sohail, in one of the very early sessions, provided me with this book, Living in the Greenzone, which I read, and I felt that the book had been written for me. I could absolutely identify with the book, the concepts of green and yellow and red, which I'll come back to, but it made the book very, very easy for me to read and for me to understand. It turns out, from my perspective, that I'd been in a depression since at least 1978 and was first diagnosed by my family doctor in 1991, at which time I was given Prozac. Over time, the Prozac just didn't work, nor did some other antidepressants, which really led to my wife asking me to go for help because it was having such a bearing on our family life and our relationship. So through my family doctor, I did meet up with Dr. Sohail and learned about the art of living in the Greenzone. What basically had been happening with me, I'd spent years and years in the red zone. The red zone for me is one of anger, resentment, feeling that there's suspicion about other people around, ulterior motives, those kind of issues. The yellow zone would be a warning to me that I was going towards the red zone. But unfortunately, I would never be able to heed or forestall those warnings, those signals that were coming to me. By comparison, the green zone I describe as one of being happy, contented, peace of mind, and being able to understand what was happening around me and how it affected my thinking and my interpretations of everyday events that occurred around me.
My wife had been away visiting her mom with my kids, so I was alone for about 3 months. It was interesting because the green zone was introduced to me during that time frame, and I started applying it immediately, right after it was introduced to me. And now that my wife is back, our relationship has changed considerably. The whole concept of me disconnecting myself from my emotions and listening to her, listening to what she had to say. Prior to that, I was more, I don't know what you're saying, but this is what I said, and that's all that matters. Now I'm listening to her and trying to understand where she's coming from. And that's made a huge impact on our marriage life. And on top of that, my wife is now reading the Green Zone as well, and she's starting to apply some of the theories on it.
When I first came, I was very consumed by anger. That a lot of it was directed at myself for putting up with certain behaviors in our relationship for so long, and I realized that I was pointing the finger of blame at my husband, and I wasn't taking responsibility for my own behavior, because the relationship takes two people, and it affected my health. I was so tired. It affected my thyroid. I had eczema so badly. And I didn't think I was in the red zone, but of course I was. But I had repressed my anger, and the Green Zone helped bring out my true self, who I was really meant to be.
My family life was affected negatively by my inability to let people get close to me, and that caused some friction with mostly my wife. And before I knew about the Green Zone concept, my wife and I argued a lot, and I used to get really upset about things, and it took me a long time to calm down. After I learned about the Green Zone concept, it improved things a little bit because I was able to have more rational conversations. I was able to get myself into my green zone and realize that That's a zone where I could make the most difference in the relationship. And it actually has currently led me to seek more assistance from Dr. Sohail in solving my inability to let people get close. So that's where I'm at personally now. And the green zone concept has helped me get to that point in my life.
The one thing it always works for me is that because I'm driving around the city and I see the traffic lights, and they're always a reminder to do a self-inventory check for myself. Where am I at? And it reminds me constantly of, am I in yellow zone, am I in red zone, or am I in green zone?
Professionally, I was really excited about the green zone because I felt that the use of the symbol of the traffic lights was a really simple symbol and yet powerful symbol that many people could understand. I mean, after all, the traffic lights are everywhere and people can relate to that simple concept. So I really liked that, and when Sohail explained the green zone to me and the concept of the traffic lights, I immediately began thinking about how that could be taught to adults and kids as well. And people do find that it is a concept that they can very easily embrace. So professionally, I think the metaphor really works. People find it helpful, they find it easy to learn, and they immediately move into the language of Green Zone and begin to apply it to their lives.
I don't have any anger, and I don't have my ego. I have reduced my ego. I see elimination of ego and reduction in my anger that is directly connected with living in a green zone and practicing this concept.
Because of the simplicity, it's also very portable. There's been lots of conversations about the metaphor for the traffic light. Everybody has to pass through a traffic light at some point in time in their life, right? When I work with individuals with the model, I have them assessing the situation they find themselves in as they pass through the traffic light. And then I'm asking them to assess their emotional state while they're passing through the traffic light, asking them to assess their thoughts as they're passing through the traffic light, asking them to assess their behavior as they pass through the traffic light. And then look at what zone are they in? Are they in the yellow zone? Are they in the red zone? Or are they lucky enough to be in the green zone? And then take that information that they're able to reflect on and make it work for them.
It's allowed me to develop things like my consulting business, where I'm now involved in an intermodal project in Syracuse, New York, that's going to have a huge impact on the environment in the United States. It's allowed me to work on an AIDS project in Africa with other people to help save lives in Africa from AIDS, from medication, and raise money with other people. The Green Zone concept, over a long period of time, had a very positive impact on my life, because the whole idea of choice and that it was up to me to do something about it helped me get to that point.
There are three roads to the Green Zone lifestyle. The first is a creativity. Every human being. Child plays, the children play. Play is creativity. We all played. And then the very dominating mother and the very controlling father and very obsessive teacher and very autocratic principal took that away. The play went on the roadside, and we want to be responsible. So you have to be successful to be responsible. This is the work ethics. The harder you work, the more you're successful. But the harder you work, but you're doing the work that you don't enjoy, you take away, the fun out of that. So what happens, what I call is a conditioned self. So there's a conditioning. That can be social, that can be political, that can be religious. So the conditioned self develops. The playful child has a natural self, is born with a nature. He has his own identity. He has his own potential. He is a seed. There is a seed of a mango, or the seed of a strawberry plant, or a seed of corn. And what we do, the mother, the father, the teacher, the society, they have their notion. In many societies, this what I call the middle class values. You work hard, you do this, you save money, you build a house, you do this, and gradually that middle class values curbs that creative, that playful, that natural self and turns into conditioned self. And simplistically explain to them, the conditioned self is run or guided by should, have to and must. And we need to liberate the natural self, the creative self, by what you like to do, what you want to do, what you love to do. Start with an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, afternoon, evening, weekend, and gradually the person, that creativity starts as a hobby, then becomes into passion, turns into a dream, and that creativity that has been curbed by a family life, school life, work life, blossoms. And then I say that you have the creative output. Doesn't matter, it can be an opera, it can be a novel, or it can be just a nice chocolate cheesecake that you are making. Then you have to share. It is more fun sharing. And I think that is what the Greenzone people realize. Two things. One is the Greenzone person acts. The red zone person reacts. That's a very fundamental difference. So I say don't react, because you are reacting to somebody else's red zone. You have to act. You have to wait. You have to. And the second thing is, when you have a creative potential, you share. Sharing is fun. The more you share with, the more, and then gradually creating, sharing, finally it connects you with the community, connects you with the humanity. And when your creativity, a Greenzone person's creativity is communicated, is shared by the community, then it's a win-win situation. Life is like a river. As far as it flows, it is healthy, it is clean, it is fresh, it is even musical. If you see the river flowing, it produces own music. And when that flow stops, something very, very unpleasant happens. The river that was a fresh water, clean water, healthy water turns into a pond. And when it turns into a pond, it stagnates. And when it stagnates, the algae, all the yucky stuff comes. The music of the river becomes silence. And I felt that silencing, that snubbing, that stagnating had a powerful effect. And then I realized, as a medical student, as a doctor, as a physician, that for the life to be healthy, your blood has to flow in the circulation. If the blood stops, the high cholesterol, it leads to heart attack. If the intestinal system is not flowing well, you can have a colic, you can have an abdominal intestinal obstruction, and person can die. If the breathing stops, the air doesn't flow, you can have distress, breathing distress, like we see in children who are asthmatic. The similar analogy I felt may be applied to the emotions. For a healthy person, a Greenzone person, his emotion has to flow. He or she has to know how to express his anger, how to express his frustration, how to express his depression. As far as he's able to do that, then the chances of them is to stay healthy. Based on my lifelong experiences as a poet, a humanist, and a psychotherapist, I have created a Greenzone philosophy. It is a philosophy that helps people make wise choices in life so that they can decrease their emotional suffering and improve their quality of life. It helps them find peace within themselves and harmony with others. Gradually, they become an integral part of creating a happy, healthy, and peaceful world, a Greenzone world that we all need more today than ever before.
To get more information on the Greenzone lifestyle, you can visit our website at www.greenzoneliving.ca or email us at info@greenzoneliving.ca.